Coming to you live from the Mistopheles Studios, it's Dark Fringe Radio.
I try to move, but my body won't work. I try to talk, but I lose all words. All that ever slips from my face are teeth and dreams I can't take. Waking from I face the days.
Bro, that's all we need, my friend. That's all we need.
And pizzazz. I bring pizzazz.
Pizzazz. I like pizzazz. Pizzazz. You have to have style pizzazz. You know what I'm saying?
Baby. I drive an dude, a guy at the funeral today, a guy at the cemetery asked me if I wanted to sell my car.
Oh shit. Of course. Of course. Why wouldn't they?
Like I'm driving, he's like, that's a nice LX. I'm like, GT, homie.
GT, bro. Yeah.
GT, bro. Actually,
Yeah,
GT,
yeah.
bro, is exactly what I said.
Yeah.
GT,
See?
bro.
GT, bro.
It's an 84. And he goes, oh, I had one just like it. And in my mind, I'm like, no, you didn't.
No, you didn't. Yeah, because you would have known it was a GT.
Because you would have known it was an 84 GT.
Right. Not an LX. Fucking people. Yeah. I swear.
And he goes,
what?
You interested in selling it? I was like, no.
Fuck no. No.
Hell
It's
no.
my pride and joy. I'm going to fucking sell it to you? No. Have a good day, sir. Be on with you, sir.
I get out this way, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, welcome to Dark Fringe Radio. This is how we're going to start this bitch off, motherfucker, tonight. Hell yeah, man. Thank you for joining us on another edition of Dark Fringe Radio. And of course, I love that like weird opening, how we're going to start doing that from now on, Jay. I'm just going to fucking break in like that. I like that.
Just running start.
Good energy, and that's why I like it, you know?
I like it.
But hey, listen, thanks for joining us on another edition of Dark Fringe Radio. Tonight we have a very special interview with Tony Brasunas regarding his book, Red, White, and Blind. You can pick that up right now at redwhiteandblind.com. We'll get into all that information here in a little bit, but we'll be talking to him, and he is an independent journalist and author of this book, where he basically worked for a very big publisher and publication in, I believe, New York. And they basically blacklisted him because of the story that he was pushing out, because of, you know, the narrative that they want to push out there. And so this is all talking about misinformation and really, really interesting conversation that I had with Tony Brasunas. So I hope you guys stick around for that. But tonight, Jay, man, we're going to get this thing started, man. This is our second episode for 2023. And you know what? I am really excited. We're going to have a lot more coming for you, everyone here soon. I want to remind everybody, please check out our website, darkfringeradio.com. Make sure you go there and you can see all our stuff there, all our episode, everything is available there. And of course, our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Make sure you check that out. We got a lot of cool shit happening there too. Actually, Jay, I shared this video on Facebook. It actually got 25,000 views.
That's a lot.
It's a lot, bro. Here, let me show you. Let me show you what's going on here. But
that's lots of people.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of people. But give me 1 second here. So, okay, so here's the video that I wanted to show you. That a lot of likes on Facebook and a lot of views. So check
Evidence
this out.
that somebody had the capacity to explore the world during the last ice age. One of the things I find most striking is the presence of Antarctica on ancient maps, because we didn't discover it until 1820, and yet it's on maps drawn in the 1500s with great detail, which again were based on much older source maps that have now been lost to us. They call it the Southern Land, and it's larger than it is today, but it was larger than it is today during the Ice Age. What the fuck is it doing on a map drawn in the 1500s, which we know was based on older source maps when nobody knew it existed in the 1500s? To me, the obvious answer is we are dealing with the fingerprints of a lost civilization that mapped the world and that left evidence of that mapping, which ancient map makers found and used and incorporated into their maps.
So yeah, pretty interesting, huh? That's Graham Hancock. I don't know if you've ever seen him, Jay, but he's on Joe Rogan a lot, and pretty interesting guy. He kind of he's not like
a good
go ahead,
point.
Jay. Oh, it
It's
is.
a hell of a point.
It's a hell of a point, and it makes perfect fucking sense. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to debate that. So yeah, they got over 25,000 views on that bad boy, and a lot of people are interested in stuff like this because I think a lot of people are. Go ahead, Jay.
But what if, and I'm just going to throw out a theory here because just shits and giggles. What if, because we know it comes from older source material, yeah? When was the Dark Ages?
That's the thing. A lot of people speculate it's this X amount of 1,000 years ago, when it could be actually much more recent than what people think. There's a theory right now, like they say about Egypt, right? How ancient Egypt was like supposedly X thousand amount of years ago, what 4,000 years or 6,000 years ago. A lot of people are theorizing that that's actually not the case, that was a much more recent than it was originally thought. They're saying maybe 1,000, maybe 2,000 at most. So I think we're still playing the piece game of our history. I don't think we have it right, to be quite honest with you. I think
timelines?
We have an idea. No, timeline's definitely not, because it just doesn't seem right. And things kept getting older, as like this guy's, his shirt was saying. It's because we keep finding more and more remains of humans that are dating back further and further. Much more than we originally thought.
There's so many things. Like I was actually just listening to something Neil deGrasse Tyson talk about the core of the Earth slowing and spinning in opposite direction. And apparently this is something that happens. So we have these calendars and dates and timelines, and we build these constructs to help our brains understand the reality in which we have to grasp. But we might have the maths all wrong, and something like that now being discovered, that would change all the timelines. If it slows it down and one day instead of being 24 hours is 28 hours. I mean, who the hell knows? What the fuck do I know? It's an interesting point, and I would be curious to see how some of those smart people redo math.
Yeah, and it's happening because when we were in school, I fondly remember that we were taught that humans didn't come over the Siberian Strait until they came to the top, and then made their way down to North America, and that's how they populated North America. And that was over like 10,000 years ago or something like that. Now they're finding supposedly like human remains that are going 50,000, maybe even 100,000 years before that. And so that whole idea of that's how we came over here and this place wasn't populated before we got here is bullshit, because now that whole theory is out the window. Now
that one really didn't hold much water.
I mean, that's what they taught us in school. That's what they taught us in school.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Sure. And with the information,
and I know things change,
time, and trying to, and also, we're young as a society. We're still young as a society. We're
absolutely
young.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're very, very young.
That's why I think we haven't met the aliens yet, but we'll touch on that, I'm sure.
That's one coming up in the next couple of weeks here, Jay. I'm sure we'll be touching on that. But yeah, no, it's just interesting stuff that I'm posting on Facebook a lot. Just to, pique some interest on some, alternative theories and things like that. Because you know what? We really don't know. If you really think about it, we really don't know. We don't know. No, we don't know a lot, my friend. We don't know a lot.
No, take it easy.
Muy poquito. Muy poquito.
Muy poquito.
So, that's right. So so make sure you check us out on our social media, again, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Dark Fringe Radio. So Jay, let's get into some Dark Fringe news. And this week, man, we got some fucking heavy shit. This is some cool shit that we're going to be talking about. But first thing, we're going to be talking about this Pfizer executive that thought he was on a date. And he was not on a date. Unbeknownst to him, he was not on a date, but
it was actually a guy.
It was a guy. Yeah. It was a guy, and he had a very interesting date with another man. And the other man just happened to start questioning about, what he does and, for his profession. And he, divulged that he's a Pfizer executive. He's in charge of the R&D department and things of that nature. And long story short, he starts explaining to this gentleman who's recording him on how the company Pfizer is basically figuring out how to make money off the coronavirus by mutating it over and over again and making vaccines for the mutations right away, so they can have that already in place once that happens, if there's ever an outbreak. So I'm going to play this clip here, Jay. This clip has actually been taken down by YouTube, but at this point,
are you sure we'll play it?
Yeah, we'll play it. If it gets taken down or we get just blacked out for that part of the video, it is what it is. But we're just recording on it. We're just recording on it. Listen, it's not. We didn't take the video. We're not responsible for the video, but we can play it and we can talk about it. We can give our thoughts and absolutely about it. And that's true. So nobody else can say anything about that. So give me 1 second here and we'll start the video. All right, Jay, here's the video. Let's get this started.
Hey there. Is this seat taken? You work for Pfizer. My question for you is, why does Pfizer want to hide from the public the fact that they're mutating the COVID viruses?
Is this real life? I'm literally lying.
This is real life.
I was trying to impress a person on a date by lying.
This is absurd. Please don't touch me. Well, this is not. By the way, don't tell anybody.
Someone who's just working in a company to literally help the public. You up. You really did. Please bring the cops as soon as possible. I'm really very unsafe.
Can you please unlock your door?
No, don't let them leave.
Please unlock the door.
Give me what is going on here?
Please unlock. Please unlock the door. Please unlock the door.
And by the way, Jay, you see the desperation in this guy's face, right? Like,
well, clear. Okay,
there's a clear look of desperation in his face. Like, he knew that he fucked up, right?
Not play devil's advocate, because yes,
okay,
clearly,
go ahead.
Clearly, he's working for the empire. Okay,
right.
He's working for the empire. Clearly, okay,
right.
But let's be honest, he was kind of catfished.
He was.
Okay, that is kind of some entrapment bullshit.
It is. But he is also the worldwide R&D strategic operations, scientific planning.
Also, okay, I'm not saying both can't be true.
No, you're right. I give you that.
Okay,
right.
As much of a ginormous piece of shit as he is, and as much as he deserves to be brought to justice properly for trying to gain on making people ill or preparing.
Well, it's not him. It's the company, and who's going to go against Pfizer?
Well, okay, perfect. But I do feel like that was just a bit, I don't know, a little across the particular line.
Here, let's see some more of this crazy bullshit of this guy. This is fucking wonderful. I love watching people.
I mean, everything is crashing. I feel for the guy. That's it. His life is over with.
Oh, he's over.
Lock the door. We're trying to get.
And big ups to Project Veritas. That's the name of the company who actually put this together. Those guys, had the balls to actually do something like this. But go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and.
They're brave.
Unlock the door.
What?
Pfizer not wanting the public to know that you guys are doing directed evolution.
Bro, what is going on here? Like, that feels like an interview.
I don't know, it's freaking out. I mean, these like flashbacks to that like sting organization of like those conservative people who like randomly go into organizations and then like befriend people who work in these organizations and then report them, which happened to people at Pfizer. So it's like freaks me out when people start asking a lot of questions about work. It's really
really? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Bro, why would that this company?
Because I just want to know the answer.
Oh, they cut us. Hold on, Jay.
Why is Pfizer hide from?
really did. I'm about to.
Hold on. They cut us. Long story short, go to Project Veritas on Twitter. And it's interesting shit that's happening over there, Jay. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Again.
What's your thought? Give me your thoughts on this.
Listen, this guy is one of many over there that are doing terrible, awful things. And they all do deserve to be brought. And yes, their light does need to be brought on the nefarious actions. But catfishing a dude.
I think it's great.
Yeah, well, shocker. William, shocker. Okay.
I love shit like this. I don't know.
You guys know, again, I'm gonna point out our entire childhood, he was known as like the sweet, innocent one, and I was the one that everybody was told to watch out for because I was a troublemaker. And it wasn't true. It wasn't true.
I wasn't the troublemaker. I stopped a lot of trouble. It's all like RoboCop. There won't be any trouble around here. Oh Lord, but yeah, I mean, listen, Jay. Hey, I mean, this guy. You just see. Listen, and please, the clip is 10 minutes long. We did it no justice by showing like 3 minutes of it. It's really good.
And again,
part of me feels for the guy because he got catfish.
That's what I'm saying.
Part of me feels for the guy. Yeah, I'll give you that.
That would be a shitty way to
get fucked over. Yes, yeah, but you're fucking over a lot of people and playing with people's lives. Yeah,
but also,
yeah.
Yes,
so,
but also,
yeah, it's weird, right?
It's weird.
It's weird. Yeah, it's one of those weird situations. Now that we live in like a world of cameras and things of that nature, and
a whole different world, bro.
It is. It's not like the 80s, you could get away with a lot of stuff in the 80s. Nobody was recording anything.
Nothing.
There was
I was
nothing
talking
going on.
Just last night as we were driving to go shoot pool. He and I carpool now because gas is expensive shit.
Oh yeah.
It's made from eggs. So
yeah, that's what it seems like.
Crazy.
Yeah,
crazy.
apparently.
So
yeah.
But we're talking about just how it was. You could just say things like he got pulled over. He got his learner's permit in New York with different rules. Came down here and got pulled over, knowing full well that he shouldn't be driving. But he was like, "Oh, I didn't realize it was different." And they're like, "Oh, okay, no worries. Have a good day."
Oh, that's it.
Yeah.
Wish I had that same situation happen to me.
Okay.
Yeah, have a great day.
Okay. Well,
get on the fucking guard.
Okay. And again, friends, I point out my 17th birthday.
Oh my God! Yes, I remember this. Here we go.
My 17th
Tell the story,
birthday.
Jay. Tell the story, Jay.
So 84 Mustangs, to turn on the lights, there's a little knob you have to pull out on the dash. And when you're 17, it's the first time you're driving at night, you don't know. Yeah. So we drove to Blockbuster to get
that's how much we're dating ourselves right now. We went to where, Jay?
Blockbuster.
Where did we go?
Fucking old Blockbuster.
Yes, we went to Blockbuster. Yes.
And I was driving the parking lot with my lights off.
And I'm just as equally as responsible because I didn't even notice that the fucking headlights weren't on either, like the dumbass. Yeah.
It was bright. Like you could.
It was dusk. It was like one of those situations. Yeah.
It was just one of those things. And the cop was certainly being extra. So the policeman pulls us over, and he is of Latin descent, very clearly. So the gentleman asked for my license and registration, all that. My mother is an insurance agent, so I'm having a heart attack because I think I'm going to die. My car's going to be impounded and crushed. I'm handing the guy my information. Yeah. True story. So I hand the guy my information. He gives me a ticket. As he gives it to me, he goes, "Happy birthday." So I'm elated that that's all that's happening.
Complete dick, by the way. That's a complete dick move, by the way. But
100%. 100%. But
because he did it in a sarcastic way, like I'm going to give you a ticket.
It was dealt with. I had to go deal with my mother. Like we're good. But what does Will yell? Will yells something out in Latin about the gentleman's mother and his dog, and that's why he looks like whatever he looks like.
Yeah.
So, but he says it in Spanish, so I don't know. So we get back in the car. I'm like, "What did you say?" He's like, "Oh, yeah, basically that, his family dog fucked his mom. That's why he's so fucking ugly." And I was like, "Oh, because that's helpful. Thanks." Now, luckily, I don't know if the guy didn't hear it or if he did decide to let us go. But yeah. Again, no, he doesn't start the trouble. No,
I didn't. I had a moment, Jay. You know what I mean? People have their moments. I had a moment. You know what I mean? That was being a dick. You know what I mean?
No, 100%. No,
yeah.
100%.
Joke was on him because it took him fucking forever to go rambling through your fucking car.
Sure did. I lived that way.
He rifled through that whole car and he was looking for something and he didn't find nothing.
He sure did.
And I'm just sitting there like looking at him like, you stupid fuck. I'm like, keep going, brother. I was like, because you're not going to find shit but fucking old, fucking stale French fries.
Old wrestling stuff in the comments.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you're not going to find nothing, brother. Oh, so yeah. Not one of my finest moments, but it's all good, Hey, listen, it is what it is. But hey, listen, this Pfizer exec, let's see, it's crazy. I don't know, man. Do I want to see more of this? I don't know. It's crazy.
He's a douche that needs to be brought to justice, but there's got to be better ways to do it. That's all.
I would be surprised you found them suicided in the back of an alley, but that's just me. I don't know. Right?
Oh, suiciding. That's an interesting.
Suicide with the big, you know what I mean? Yeah. Very, Yes, Mrs. Robinson. Oh,
Subtle.
Lord, but it was very subtle. All right, second thing I wanted to talk about tonight, Jay. Really cool shit. So over in Hawaii, this big blue whirlpool appeared in the sky out of nowhere.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, bro. This is some crazy shit. I'm going to show you this video, and I wanted to see what you think. Again,
we know what I think.
No, listen, check this out. This was recorded by a space station. So it was like one of those space stations on land that just look at the stars constantly. In Japan. So that's what you'll see the Japanese characters there on top. But give me a second. So see that, Jay?
Yes.
Look at that. That's real time, bro. Look at that.
Huh.
That's fucking amazing, no?
Yeah.
Look at all the stars fucking going back and forth, all the shooting stars.
Yeah.
Here's the whole sequence again. You'll see it on the top left-hand screen. And you can see it's starting from here.
Yeah.
Now look at that. So some kind of resonance came off of it right there. And this is where it starts to get kind of weird. Here we go. Look at that, Jay. Bro, if you saw that.
Oh.
No, it's not, right? Tell me if you saw that in real life that you wouldn't be scared as fuck, bro.
I don't have to see it in real life. I saw it right there. I'm good. That's
crazy, bro.
I mean, people play pranks and shit, but sometimes I don't know, stuff like that I don't know.
Yeah, so they're saying they said it supposedly had something to do with a piece of SpaceX debris that went out. They're not saying that's what it is for sure, though. So to me, it's all bullshit. I think they just don't know what the fuck it was. That's just my fucking opinion.
It's hard for really smart people to say I don't know. So they go,
that's what it could be. This. That's all they said.
Yeah.
They didn't say it definitely was that, or they believe that it definitely was that. They said it could be that. And that's all they said. It's possible. It's possible that I was high outside looking at that, and maybe I just imagined it.
Also
possible.
Very
possible.
Anything's possible, brother.
Anything's possible these days. Oh, so yeah, man. A lot of weird shit's happening in the sky. A lot of weird shit.
Yeah. Not concerning at all.
Not concerning at all. But that one is most interesting because of the way it looked. It looked almost completely fake, but it's real. Like you look at that shit and you're just like, how does something make that design? And it's just amazing.
Believe it or not, the design itself, well, that's really cool and hard to believe that was made somewhere in nature. You could venture to say that with all that happens in space, something like that could be gases exploding, something hitting off something, just something you just happen to look up at the right spot. It's when all the other stars start to kind of move around it.
Right. That's what makes it real.
Yeah.
That's what makes it real.
Okay. I know.
If there was nothing else going on, that's where it's like, okay. Right. It's concerning. Yeah. I'm with you, brother. I'm with you. We're here, bro. It's something's going on, man. It's not good. I don't know if it's good. Who knows? It could be good. Could be bad.
It could be.
Right?
It could be good.
Yeah. Let's be optimist about this, right? Let's see. We'll see what happens. I'll leave it up to you guys. But listen, that's what were you gonna say, Jay?
I was gonna say it kind of reminds me of my favorite Twilight Zone episode.
Which one? Man. Which one is that one? Is that the one where he's in the city and he keeps going around the city? And
no. So that's the one where the aliens come down. They solve all Earth's problems. They solve war and famine and all that. and they start taking people back to their planet, and they carried these books that everybody kind of thought were like their Bibles and whatnot. But a code breaker ended up getting one of the books and figuring out that actually it was a recipe on not how to serve man, as in how to help us, but more on how to cook and prepare and then devour us.
Yeah, a la Hannibal style. Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy shit, no? Yeah, I love the Twilight Zone. Great shit, man. Yeah.
Great shit.
Talking Tina, remember that one?
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
What?
Hi, I'm Talking Tina. I want to kill you. Like, what? You're a doll. Get the fuck out of here. Yeah. What is going on right now? I threw you away. Now you're back. How's that happening?
Oh,
yeah. Anyways, but listen, that's a nice little wrap for Dark Fringe News. Jay, this is now your court. We're coming up to What the F, Florida Man. What do you have for this week for What the F, Florida Man?
All right, friends. Well, after many minutes of searching long in the very first link I saw when I Googled funniest, most recent Florida Man stories.
Oh, Lord.
I come across the very first topic. So, devour.
What do you got, Jay?
Florida man found drugs. I'm sorry. Take two.
Okay.
Florida man found with drugs after getting trapped in a porta potty.
Ooh.
Kind of a shitty situation.
Literally. Wink. You think this is one of these asshole friends like fucking knocked over the porta potty on the side where the door is and now you can't get out?
Asshole for sure.
Yeah. So let's hear the story, Jay. Is there any more to this at all or what?
So let me paint a picture for you.
Let's see, a shitty picture?
A lot of browns. Browns.
There was some brown trees over here.
A little bit of greens.
A brown tree. Yeah.
Have little trees over here.
Yeah, happy little tree over here.
Collier County, Florida. What does that remind you of?
Oh.
Laces
Jay.
out,
Yeah.
Dan.
Laces out, yeah.
Collier County, Florida. Collier County, Florida. A Florida man found stuck inside a porta potty was arrested on drug charges after deputies found him screaming for help. According to WBBH, deputies with Collier County Sheriff's Office were called after reports of a suspicious person and someone shouting for help. When the deputy arrived, the man could be heard yelling loudly. As the officer got closer, he saw a foot sticking out of the bottom of the porta potty. And the deputy was able to get the man out, who was 34 years old, Mr. James Gousse, Gousse. I apologize for mispronouncing that.
No, that's
really shitty of me.
Yeah.
Deputies said he had told them that he'd gotten his foot stuck in the door. Once the deputy had opened the door, that's when they had found the baggie with a powdery substance, which later turned out to be fentanyl, as well as a syringe.
Oh.
So he went in to get himself some bakey. He got all locked in there because he was high, and then he got caught with his stash. And
a knee full of shit.
Shitty.
Man, that's shitty. It's wonderful. Well, listen, it wow. You know what?
Yes.
It's just one of those weird situations where it's just like you're just not a good criminal at that point. You just leave it alone. You're just horrible. You know what I mean? Just give it up, man. Do something else.
Come on, guy.
Because you can't even do that. You know, you're getting arrested in a porta potty with fentanyl on you. You're not doing something right with your life, man. So yeah, that's pretty.
You need Jesus.
Well, listen, very shitty story coming out of Collier County, Florida. Excuse me. So Jay, I appreciate that for What the Florida Man. We really do appreciate that. Up next is our interview with Mr. Tony Brasunas, of course, the journalist and author of Red, White, and Blind. You can find his book at redwhiteandblind.com. It is available now, and also available on Amazon and everywhere else you can find those kind of books. And there's going to be an online opening or online book release on February 7th. Go to his website, tonybrasunas.com. That's TonyBrasuans.com. And make sure you check that out. Yeah, a nice online opening. He'll be doing a Zoom meeting. Very interesting stuff. So make sure you go ahead and check it out. But we're going to have this very interesting talk about misinformation and America. And so please don't go too far and check it out.
Don't touch that tile.
Yeah, that's that. Hi, guys. Thanks for joining us on another edition of Dark Fringe Radio. Tonight, we're going to be talking about a really serious subject. The corporate media is splitting us apart as a nation by telling different groups of people different versions of the same story. And worst off, many of us hide our true thoughts for fear of being shamed or canceled at work by those in our own families and communities. News reporting in the corporate media is not only polarizing, but often very deceptive and distorted as the Chinese media. Many Americans don't know this because our channels are more sophisticated. Thus, Americans are divided and deceived and confused. So tonight we have a very special guest. He is an independent journalist. He's also an author of Red, White, and Blind. He was censored and sacked by the Huffington Post in 2016 for covering the Democratic primary from a different or wrong perspective, as they would say. And he's been researching censorship, media distortion, and disinformation in America for 5 years now, with the distinct hope that the underlying facts about the fake news in America and the disinformation that is peddled every day in our corporate media will inspire Americans to exercise and defend our rights to free speech and a free press. He's the author of Red, White, and Blind. Please welcome to Dark Fringe Radio, Tony Brasunas. Tony, welcome to Dark Fringe Radio, my friend.
Thank you so much, Will. I really appreciate it. Delighted to be here.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much, man, for coming on the podcast. This is definitely right up our alley. This is what we love to talk about. Misinformation or disinformation or whatever you want to call it. It's running rapid these days. I mean, I was literally watching TV the other day and I was flipping through channels and I was watching the coverage of the FBI raid of Mar-a-Lago, which was a very hot topic here in the last few days here.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Right here in my backyard, matter of fact, right here in West Palm Beach. I actually live in West Palm. So it's really seriously weird because it's like you're almost living in two different worlds. Like you can change the channel to one channel and they're talking about the same event that's happening, but from a completely different skew and view. And then you go from another channel and it's supposed to be news as well. And it's exactly the opposite. So it's like you're living in the upside down world. Talk to me, man. Talk to me. What pushed you to do this book? What brought this whole catalyst on of the Red, White, and Blind?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. And we can get right into that, why the media is deceiving everybody and at the same time tearing us apart, right? So how do they call it news if it's two completely different versions of reality? So I started this I started writing Red, White, and Blind in 2019 is when I started. And so it was before the pandemic and the whole topsy-turvy world that we went through in 2020. So it was really interesting as I started writing it about media deception and censorship and propaganda, and then just watch these things sort of like spiral out of control, or maybe you could say like take 3 orders of magnitude up. So that was really interesting. But before that, I mean, as you mentioned, I was in 2016, I was writing for Huffington Post, and I can get into how they brought me on board and stuff if you're interested. But I was covering the Democratic primary, and quite a few of I was covering from the Bernie Sanders perspective, which there was not a lot of people writing from that perspective for a number of reasons. And so my articles would get a lot of following. I would get 50,000 views, 100,000 views. Sometimes my pieces would even make it on the front page of the Huffington Post. And then I was censored. I was just taken down. I wrote an article. I have a whole chapter in the book about this experience. It was quite wild, where I had written an article and I'd published it, and I watched the views go up right before I got into bed that night. It was at 20,000 or 30,000 views. I don't remember specifically. I woke up the next morning, it was gone. And it was a really interesting experience. I had heard about censorship, but it was kind of still this thing that I didn't really know if it was going on. And so to really experience it firsthand was really eye-opening. And I was about to get on the plane to go to Philadelphia, where the convention was that year, the Democratic convention, just a few days later. And when I woke up that morning and the article was gone, I couldn't even log into Huffington Post anymore. I was totally gone from it. But I noticed something that was really interesting, and this became a kernel that has become the book, which was independent media was really sort of coming into its own at that time. And so what happened is I went on and I found people on these various places, Reddit and wherever you can imagine, all these different places, talking about my piece and saying, where did it go? And you had this whole phenomenon where there's this instinctual craving for the truth that people have. When they hear something is censored, they want it even more, right? There's this sense we don't want to have the truth taken away from us. And so what happened is somebody had copied the article before it was taken down. I was able to grab it from them, post it on medium.com, where I had sort of a blog. And then I tweeted, I put that on Twitter, and then I got on the plane and flew to Philadelphia. And when I was there, I realized it had become my most read, most popular piece that I had written the entire year. Right, which is really interesting because it wasn't Huffington Post had tried to take me down, but the piece became more popular. So that really was the founding sort of germ of what became the book. And then as Trump won the election and during those 4 years of the Trump term, we really saw this whole fake news thing come about. And what is fake news? Everything was fake news or not fake news. And some people used it obviously to talk about independent media, but then a lot of people are starting to use it about the corporate media. And so that's the beginning of the book. And that's what I've been researching for now, 3-4 years.
No, this is great. I mean, it's so weird that you said that. It's so true how the focus went from the fake media perspective to the independent journalists. And then it kind of got shifted over to the more mainstream people. And that's where it's stuck at right now. As far as the, independent journalists right now, they're actually more of the real news than anything else these days that you can find, at least. And it's crazy. I was going to ask you a question regarding the Huffington Post and how that all worked out. I was going to ask if it was like kind of like a slow burn, like did they start slowly like taking down your stuff? But no, it was like an overnight thing. And it just happened to be that it was your most viewed article that you've ever done. It started to get too big, right?
Well, more or less. I mean, basically, yeah, there was no slow burn. I heard nothing from anybody. As far as I knew, I was doing great. I was bringing a lot of viewers. People were talking. In fact, one of my pieces was about election fraud and investing. And I thought that would have been the one taken down. That piece actually ended up being cited in a lawsuit against the Justice Department. They listed my article in Huffington Post as reasons that the Democratic primary, and it was the one in California, I believe the lawsuit was about in 2016. And I wasn't taken down for that. It was the piece that I wrote was right on the eve of the convention. And I was basically saying, look, neither candidate Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders has a majority of the delegates enough to win. They're going to need the super delegates to call the shots or, break the tie at the convention. And look, we should probably go with the guy who's more trusted, and head-to-head polling is polling better against Donald Trump. And it makes sense to go with them, even though, the sort of corporate establishment would prefer Hillary Clinton. And I made the arguments and I listed a number of reasons why Bernie Sanders was trusted and Hillary Clinton was not trusted. And some of those reasons, I was just sort of laying them out, but for whatever reason, I was pulled down and it was gone. And that was the one. And so, no, I don't know how much traffic it got on Huffington Post. It became my most read article after I posted it on Medium.
Okay.
So that was really why I saw the rise of independent media, because if this piece my Medium piece wasn't getting any corporate media, support. It was just Twitter and people interested in it, so that was what was really interesting.
Yeah. And like you said, there is craving and there is a clamoring for the truth from people out there now, even more now than ever because of how bad things are in the media. Do you think it's dangerous that our country media sources are they're increasingly telling us a different story all the time? Like this is it's like Mirror World. I mean, is this going to get any better or is this going to get worse? Do you think?
So that's two questions. Yeah, let me get into it. I think, is it dangerous that there's two versions of stories? So one of the things I get into in the book is that when the framers of the Constitution, coming out of the Great Enlightenment, put the freedom of the press in our Constitution, it was not because they thought there would be one big newspaper that would tell the truth and that newspaper should be defended. That wasn't what it was, and that wasn't the state of affairs in the day. It was there was many, many different voices, and every voice was different. In each city, there'd be a newspaper, or there'd be a publication from the Italians or the Republicans, or well, there are no Republicans yet, but the labor. As you went through the 1800s, you had this flowering of the press, where you had all of these different voices, and yeah, they were different accounts of the same thing, right? So the freedom of the press is not about professional journalists get to do what they want. It's like the freedom of speech. Anybody can speak. Anybody can publish what they want. Anybody can. Your enjoying the freedom of the press right now, as am I, because we're putting our things out to people through the press. I mean, here's the internet, right? It's freedom of speech plus press is what allows us to communicate and communicate about politics.
Right.
So I think we're getting back to that, actually. And it's a fractious time, and it's kind of difficult. But what we're seeing is the breakup of this sort of single monolithic corporate media that was consolidated over the last 50 years into 4 or 5 giant corporations that own everything that we're supposed to believe, everything that we're supposed to hear and read. That is breaking apart. What we're getting is a rebirth of what I would say was the original vision of the free press, which is lots of different voices. And that's just what it is, because there is no such thing as objective news. Like, you and I could tell different versions of this conversation, right? And one of us be right or wrong. We might not be even trying to be dishonest. We just have a different version, right? Because we have different kinds of biases based on our perspective and stuff like that. Correct. So the job of citizens in voting in their democracy is to have a balanced media diet to some extent. Try to at least read outside of your thought bubble. That's the idea. And that's what I get into in the book, is we're going into what I call a new enlightenment. This new enlightenment is a time where, again, we have a flowering of different views. Again, there's revealing of truth. A lot of truths that were hidden for the last 100 years are coming out. It's a new enlightenment. The powers that be want to put the milk back in the bottle. They want to keep their power, just like the feudal lords and the Catholic bishops wanted to do that, before the new enlightenment, before the first enlightenment. They wanted to keep hold of all of the power. Now we see the big corporations want to do that. So we're moving into a time where this is just the nature of it. It is difficult, right? There's a challenge of Mar-a-Lago. Like, what happened there? Did the FBI were they justified in raiding the home of a previous president? And I've read different versions of it, and we could dive into it if you'd like. But I think the point is that it's not something to fear. We're moving into an environment in which it's more honest, because there's going to be a diversity of voices, and our job is to ideally read more broadly and come to our own truth.
Yeah, I totally agree 100%. One thing I am afraid of, and one thing I do fear, is censorship. And that is something that is starting to become a problem, especially with social media these days. Of course, you have the Facebook fact checkers, which are completely opinion, which has been stated by many people. Where do you see this whole censorship game going now? I mean, now that it's hard to even post things on the internet, it's hard to post things on social media, especially if it's from a very different view than what the mainstream media portrays. Where do you think this whole censorship is going?
Yeah, it's a great point. And that's censorship. I write about this in the book, is the one of the very few things that science and democracy cannot survive.
Right.
It's anathema to the Enlightenment, your first Enlightenment, basically what created our Constitution, what created this country. Because if you have censorship, then you can't rely on science. There's no sense that you would be arriving at the truth, because you've removed certain views. And you can't have democracy because you'd be removing certain views of facts. So it is very dangerous. Yeah, absolutely. And that is one of the reasons I wrote the book and spent all this time researching this, is because there is a danger of censorship, and we do see it encroaching. And there are people on both sides that see it coming from different sides. And sorry.
No problem.
Yeah, so so censorship is an issue, and I do think that we need to be concerned about it. And part of the way that we defend it is by exercising free speech.
Right.
So that's how you save and preserve rights, is by exercising them. So get out and say something controversial, get out and say something somebody might not want you to hear, do podcasts, have shows, talk about these things, research these things, and then we can support each other. So if you see me getting censored, which could happen to my book, it could happen to anything I'm writing, then I hope you'll come to my rescue, and I'll do the same for you. And that way, that's how we have to defend this. And I think the majority, when you poll people, the majority of Americans see it that way, even if they're on different sides of the news. I agree. And one thing that is so important is that, like you said, to support one another, support each other when it comes to these kinds of things, because if you don't, then nobody else will. And then, you end up down the censored hole, and that could be a very, dangerous thing for some people too. But one thing I wanted to talk to you about is, all the major stories that's come out in the last, 3, 4, 5 years, especially politically. There's been so much stuff that's been going on, obviously. What do you think? What are some of the stories that you find that have been the most distorted
maybe most skewed in our media as of late.
That's great. Yeah, and that's really where I start, because
Mhm.
I feel like when we get into this topic, it's so easy for people to sort of move into their bubbles and decide first, try to figure out what side you're on, whether they want to listen
Right.
to you or not.
Right.
So in the book, and I like to jump right into some of these stories. Like one of the ones is Jeffrey Epstein, the Jeffrey Epstein story, which I think is really instructive. You know, both sides tend to see this as clearly a miss. Like, how is somebody able to run essentially a pedophilia ring for hundreds, possibly thousands of girls at the very apex of power in the Western world for decades and get away with it, and be arrested and then still get off, right? And have that happen time and again. I mean, it's just insane, and it's awful, right? And so what happened there was we had, and I get into the book, three different types of bias. We have what I call nefarious bias, which is, actual manipulation of the news by covert forces. You have systemic bias, which is just the bias that exists in organizations. Then you have innocent bias, which is the bias that we have just based on our background and sort of our particular personality and things like that. And so you have all of those three biases definitely concealing the Jeffrey Epstein story. But yeah, boy, what a big one. Another one that I really get into is the origin of COVID, the origin of the coronavirus.
Oh yeah, that's
that
a big
story,
one.
right, was completely censored for 18 months. I mean, in some ways it's still censored, and like some corporate media news, you still can barely talk about it. But at this point, it's almost certainly that's where the virus came from, was out of this lab in Wuhan. And there's people saying it came even before that. It came from maybe labs in this country or somewhere else. But certainly, almost certainly it came out of a lab. But that story was censored. And that is when I was talking about science, how censorship stops science. Because if we were able to know the origin of the virus from day one, or at least from within the first couple months, I mean, immediately people had this theory, but they were shut down. It would have been much easier to sort of get to understanding how to deal with it, how to treat it, how to, all of these kinds of things. To know the origin of something is very helpful. So
let me jump in there real quick, if you don't mind.
And they're two stories that I think fairly across the board most people see as problematic.
Oh yeah, and it's so funny that you mentioned the Wuhan thing, because it's so true. I remember at the beginning when the story broke that it came out of a lab in Wuhan, you know what I mean? The whole coronavirus thing. And people were posting this on social media, and then it was getting censored, saying that it's disinformation, that it's wrong, this and that, and it continued to happen to people constantly. That they would post this. And then literally, I don't know, I think it was maybe 6 months ago, 8 months ago, 10 months ago, I think the BBC came out with a story saying that, yeah, it definitely did come out of a lab in Wuhan, you know what I mean? And they didn't censor that, you know what I mean? Because it was from the BBC. But, us everyday people, we know a story, or we think we know a story, and we perpetuate that story, and it's false information. And then, the BBC does a story on it, and it's not.
And so, and that's an important story, because what that shows is that accelerates the shift away from the corporate media and towards independent media. Because what you have is you'll have a number of people. Now, some people are still going to wait. It's if it shows up on TV, or if it's in the BBC, it happened. And if it didn't, it doesn't, or it doesn't, it didn't, right? But those numbers are dwindling, and what's growing are the people that see, because all you have to do is see one or two stories where it's reported one way in the corporate media, but personally that it's otherwise. That only has to happen a couple times, sometimes just once, maybe about the origin of the virus. And then you kind of wake up and you're like, you know what, I guess I'm being lied to by this corporate media machine. And guess what? They're mostly funded by the pharmaceuticals, or they're mostly funded by military industrial complex. And so it makes sense. That's where they're trying to make their money. And there's other reasons that they do it as well. It's not just about the money they get from their advertisers. But yeah, so you have a story like that, like the origin of the virus, and you have it comes out that it came out of a lab, almost certainly. All of the people that remember when this was talked about and it was censored, like it doesn't just go away. They're like, oh, so they lied to us about it for a year and a half. Yeah, it was on the fact checkers. It was fact checked as like pants on fire lies. It's like, oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's what we know it's true.
Right.
Sometimes I hear these days, and I can't claim source credit for this, but somebody said it and I liked it, which is we're in an era where conspiracy theory is a spoiler alert.
Yes, it is. It is. And that's why I love being a conspiracy theorist. You know what? The propaganda has gotten so out of hand. I think, there's even propaganda, in our media that, even though it may not be Chinese or Russian media, that's much more distorted. Ours it's more sneaky in our way. We kind of sneak it in a little bit more differently. And what you've kind of just explained there, how we have, people kind of pulling the strings from above, it's easily just inserted into our psyche through the news, even more now than ever. How is our media different, or is it, you find it more distorted now than it ever was before? What's your opinion or take on that?
Yeah, so this is where I'd say I'd use that term slow burn. I think it has been a little bit of a slow burn. I mean, I do compare in the book American media to Chinese media because I spent some time in China. I was there when I was young, teaching English when I was just out of college, and I went back to China as well. I was just really interested in the culture and things, and not interested at all in their political system. I think it's absolutely what we do not want here. But what I noticed is that their media is certainly controlled, and it's certainly propaganda, but it's a bit more crude. It's a bit more obvious, and people there tend to know it. That's a big difference, right? A lot of people there know that their news is propaganda from the government because there's no like diversity of sources. Whereas in this country, it's much more sophisticated. There's a whole array of sources. So you get this illusion of this really free, fertile press that's reporting on things from all these different perspectives. And you've got the Atlantic, and you can listen to NPR, and there's like, Fox over here and things like that. But what I like, basically what I call this in the book, is the most sophisticated propaganda instrument ever created in history. It's fabulous in a way. I mean, if you just stand back and marvel at it, it's pretty amazing. But there's been this slow burn, I think, of it becoming worse and worse, to the point that it's not more like the Chinese media. It's just more distorted and more deceptive and more divergent from reality. And so what that's doing is it's this vicious cycle, because as they make false reports, like about the origin of the virus or Jeffrey Epstein, people start to move to independent media. And that scares the corporate media, because their most precious thing they own is the control over the narrative. And I really get into this term, the narrative, because it's a good word for describing the story. It's not just one article in a day. It's a narrative over several weeks or months. It's a dangerous virus we have to hide from. It's the Chinese are really evil and they're coming for, there's like a narrative. And the corporate media needs control of the narrative in order to continue to have all of their power. And as people start to move away from corporate media and start to turn on to independent media, they get worried that they're losing control of the narrative. And so they have to try even harder. And it's a vicious cycle, because then that means more people leave and start to realize that they can get more accurate news from independent media, and it continues to cycle. And that's what we're seeing. And so I actually believe we're in the death throes of this giant corporate media behemoth, and it's just starting to fizzle out. The tree is, dead at the trunk, but it still has a lot of green leaves, kind of thing. Yeah.
It's so funny in the Jeffrey Epstein case, for instance. I remember throughout the whole debacle, the political parties, the Republican and the Democrats, I mean, they were tossing that thing around like, oh, such and such person was there with them, and such and such person was there with them. It was like almost like a political volleyball, like, or a hot potato, like, yeah, no, this is for you, this is yours. You know what I mean? That's exactly what they kept trying to do, throwing it back and forth. And it was just like what you just talked about, the narrative, how important that is, and how they got behind it and put their own spin to it. But it was so crazy, because it was like every other week it was like, oh, this guy was there, and no, this guy was there, and it was very crazy. But that getting behind the narrative is very important, like what you said. One question I wanted to ask you was, throughout that whole, the Jeffrey Epstein trial and stuff like that, and how it got so just crazy, did you find like that the media just like, it was like, it went dead as soon as that he killed himself, supposedly, right? I mean, it was like the story just died. I mean, there was no more coverage of it. There was nothing, no more. I mean, yeah, I know the guy died, but there's still got to be more to the story. But it just seemed like everybody just let it go, and that was it. Was that your opinion?
No, I totally agree with you.
It was creepy.
Stunning.
Yeah.
And I write about that quite a bit in the book. I mean, it was sort of this hot potato nobody wanted to touch.
Right.
And nobody wanted to touch it. Nobody wanted to touch it. Finally, it was this journalist at the Miami Herald who was basically a sort of a nobody. Julie, is her name Julie Brown? I believe it's Julie K. Brown. I should check that. But I shouldn't call her a nobody, but she was not like one of their big prestigious journalists that went out and like, of course, like had written about this and now writes about that. She started doing it on her own and finally got permission. This is after 20 years and writes something. A few other people had written about it, but really it was coming out of independent media. And finally they couldn't keep the top on it anymore. It exploded as a story. But yeah, just as much as it had been held secret for so long, the minute that Jeffrey Epstein was gone, dead, maybe not dead, killed, maybe not killed himself, maybe not. We don't know. There's really, I haven't seen any compelling evidence that any one of those particular outcomes happened. So I don't know. He may be dead, he may not be. But as soon as that story was gone, it was gone. And I actually compare it to something most people don't remember, but Eliot Spitzer, the attorney general in New York. And he was sort of caught with prostitutes, I think, in Albany or something like that. And so that story got more coverage and lasted longer in the media than Jeffrey Epstein, right? Which is crazy, right? I mean, you could say they were both bad men. That's probably true. But I mean, Eliot Spitzer, okay, it was like consensual sex with a prostitute. You probably shouldn't do it. And maybe he paid for it kind of. But Jeffrey Epstein like ran this ring of like literally kidnapping girls and like using them as sex objects for decades. And that story was just here and gone. I mean, it's just crazy. So yeah, no, absolutely, you're right. The story went away very quickly. And when you say the Jeffrey Epstein trial, I mean, there was no trial. I mean, it was done. Trial. There was a trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, but even that was, sort of
that was nothing. Yeah, and it's gone now after she was convicted. And what do we hear about her now? Yeah, she's in a low security prison in Florida now. Okay, great.
And how about all the evidence? Have you ever heard of a conviction for prostitution or any of these crimes where none of the actual perpetrators are ever talked about?
That's the part that drives me crazy.
Ghislaine Maxwell happened, and we never got to talk about any of the people that actually. I mean, she was guilty of a crime for sure, but any of the people that actually,
participated,
took part. Yeah,
right. Yeah,
was the Bill Clinton or the Alan Dershowitz or the Prince? Was it Prince Andrew or one of the British princes?
Yeah.
So I mean, right? I mean, what a crazy thing. And so it's still, that story is still largely censored. I mean, it came out, but it's still largely censored, and it's because it gets right. I think it gets right to the heart of something that people don't want us looking at.
Yeah, the government obviously has some type of hand in that play, because that's the only entity that I could possibly see that would have enough power to do something like that, obviously, to say to a news corporation, ixnay on that story, Yeah,
you're not going to have like one bad apple, right?
Like
no. a bad apple at like the Miami Herald, or like a bad apple at the prosecutor's office in like Fort Lauderdale or Miami or whichever district it was, isn't going to be responsible for like this like serial pedophile getting off for 20 years. I mean, no, it's an institutional issue for sure.
Yeah. Do you find that, and I guess it's true, I mean, that the political powers at play are the ones that decide what kind of news is perpetuated more out there than others? I mean, just like as you explained about the Eliot Spitzer case in comparison to the Jeffrey Epstein case, I mean, you think that's, do you think that happens a lot more than what we think?
Do you mean the government directly manipulating the news? The U.S. government? Well, it's a really interesting case. I mean, that's really what I'm trying to get at with the whole book, is specifically who's doing it. So I spent a lot of the book documenting it, and then I spend a bit of it getting into who. But it's difficult to pin down exactly who is doing it, right? I mean, you can say it's the writers, the editors, and you can say, well, who's told the editors what to do, and all of this kind of stuff.
Too big of a tree.
Yeah, for sure. And we could spend an hour, talking about just that question. But one thing that I think is important to point out is that you don't have the ban anymore on propaganda that we had in this country for 60, 70 years, right? So this is something I talk about in the book, the Smith-Mundt Act, which was passed in Congress to ban propaganda. In other words, like our government was in the business of making news, like distributing propaganda around the globe during the Cold War, supposedly to stop the spread of communism, and we can get into that. But the idea was that like none of that can be used on the American people. And it was actually used in the sort of our own propaganda war at the time to say, look, like the people in Russia and the Soviet Union and China and Eastern Europe, they have propaganda by their governments, but we have a free press, and the government isn't manipulating our press. That was a big sort of talking point, right? Of like differentiating the communist countries from the capitalist countries and like why we're the good guys and things like that. So that Smith-Mundt Act lasted, and then it even got strengthened after the whole the Church Committee hearings that brought out Operation Mockingbird and a lot of the big, it was one of the biggest releases of sort of clandestine information about our U.S. government's activities happened in the early 70s. And that led to a strengthening of the Smith-Mundt Act because it was realized in Congress that Operation Mockingbird, the government, the CIA was literally placing agents at publications.
In media.
It's still going on today. And I write a lot about that in the book. But anyway, so then the Smith-Mundt Act was actually repealed under Obama. I don't know if you know about this, but so now you have a scenario in which the government, and then after the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act, they always name these acts, these sort of innocuous sounding titles, but the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act was really the Smith-Mundt Repeal Act. And then there was another act that followed it that gave funding. So you repealed it, and then you actually funded the government to create news. And they say supposedly it's to combat the disinformation, misinformation of other countries' news. And be that as it may, really what they're doing is they're saying we're going to actually pay people to create news and distribute it to the American people. So the fact that that's going on, in addition to manipulation at the New York Times and the Washington Post and NPR and Fox and these things, but that they're directly creating news. And during COVID, they actually, I think they put $2 billion into addressing vaccine hesitancy, as they call it, which is basically propaganda for the pharmaceuticals, I would say. So yeah, we're definitely in an era where the U.S. government is actively, as well as possibly, behind the scenes, but actively creating news.
Yeah, I think there was an article written some time ago where they talked about the U.S. government and them spending upwards of $500 million on, I think, fake terrorism videos, and just to think that they would spend that much money on just something like that.
Yeah, as opposed to like addressing homelessness or like, right now you can't get any baby formula. Like,
right.
Instead we need to, I know.
Yeah,
I know.
Ration baby formula. That's where we're at right now. Speaking about China, going back a little bit, what's your take on this whole social credit thing that they're doing? Do you think that's something that's going to trickle over here to the United States one day?
Well, yeah, I mean, it is something that keeps me up at night occasionally. I mean, when you hear people praising the Chinese system, I spent a lot of time in China. I think the Chinese, it's a beautiful country. The people are great, very kind, great food, a lot of beautiful art. We do not want anything to do with their political system. We don't want anything to do with how they run any part of that. And we certainly don't want a social credit system. It's literally like right out of sort of Orwell or one of these dystopian novels. There's even, I don't know if you ever watched Black Mirror. Have you ever watched that show?
Oh yeah, that episode.
Favorite shows. Fascinating. Sort of our modern Twilight Zone. You know how the Twilight Zone was the favorite show
show. Yeah.
Yeah.
Still is.
So
yeah.
Black Mirror is the modern day Twilight Zone. And there's an episode. Did you see the one where they literally have the social credit score with the woman who ends up at this wedding, and she's sort of like
she's trying to get to the wedding, right?
On her face. She's got a knife, and she's like, basically going to attack her so-called friend because the social credit score basically made her. I mean, ruined her, right? She's basically crawling on her hands and knees to get to this wedding so she can get up to a 4.0 credit score or something.
Right.
They do a great job. And I think it's on point. I mean, yeah, we don't want anything to do with that. It's literally, it's so close to a totalitarian infrastructure that, we don't want anything to do with that.
Tony Brasunas, of course, author, journalist of Red, White, and Blind. Thank you for joining us. When is this book going to be available?
Yeah, the book will be out mid to late October. So
mid to late October.
So look for it then. Go to TonyBrasunas.com. You can find you can sign up for my newsletter there. Everything will come out. You'll get it right in your inbox. I also have a number of things there from the book, sort of a balanced media diet, talk about the New Enlightenment, and some of the other concepts of the book. So yeah, I'd love to have your your interest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brasunas.com.
Absolutely. We're going to definitely send all our listeners there as well. Another thing I wanted to ask real quick, Tony, before I let you go, this problem that we're having with the distortion of media and censorship and things like that, again, what are some of the solutions to this? What are the things that we can do? I mean, I know we kind of talked about it and touched on it before, but is there anything else that we can do? Can we, what else? What else? What other options do we have at this point?
Great question. Even on this interview and maybe in the book, like there's a big part of it that's sort of not really doom and gloom, but sort of like having to show you how bad the system is. And it can feel fairly depressing to realize, wow, look at the level of manipulation, look at the level of deception, dating back all the way. I mean, I go back to the 1920s and the beginnings of propaganda with Bernays and Walter Lippmann and all of those kinds of the early beginnings of it and how it's been going on for 100 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're in a predicament in that sense. But there's a lot of good news too. And I spend the last third of the book really getting into that. So one of the things I talk about quite a bit is this new enlightenment, which I see is happening. And so what that looks like is thinking for yourself. We're entering a new era where there's a huge opening of available information to us. And if we can approach it with what I call media consciousness, which is like, don't just sort of, go down the rabbit hole or drink from the Kool-Aid or whatever, but like actually have your mind intact and go and don't take any one source as the truth and have a balanced media diet. And I actually propose a diet for people that have 30 minutes a day or an hour a day, or if you want to spend 2 hours a day, whatever you've got, or even if you want to unplug, there's a diet sort of for the unplugged media fast where it's just like an hour a week. And you diversify your media sources, and you have some corporate media in there, you have some independent media, you have some what I call red news and blue news, on the different sides of it. And there's also some what I call deep politics, looking at sort of the deep state stuff. Then there's foreign news. So there's a real opportunity right now for people to wake up and to start to think a little bit more broadly. And what the possibility of this is to step out of the what's the word? When you have this division and this where people are so pulled apart based on whether you believe this side or you believe that side, there can be a awakening where we are able to connect with people across the spectrum because we're able to understand news from different perspectives, right? So rather than see just one side to an issue like the Mar-a-Lago raid, or even something like abortion or gun rights or racism or whatever it is, you can understand multiple sides of it. And so you can start to talk to that person that you have had difficulty, right? Like the uncle or the, niece or your husband or wife that might have a different view of it. So by diversifying our media diet and by stepping into this new enlightenment, we have the opportunity to see things from in a much broader way than we ever have before. We're actually entering a new era where the ability to see and to know what's happening in our world is unparalleled in recent times, actually ever. So the fact that like we can have this conversation and put it on the internet and anybody can see it, or that I can go and actually watch something happening and film it and upload that video, it's actually a very exciting time. It's a very exciting time to see what's going to happen next with how we inform ourselves about reality.
Absolutely. You know what? And I think that's great. And for instance, because it kind of lit a light bulb for me here. I remember when I was on the road, I work on business development on my 9 to 5, and I'm constantly on the road. Always different hotels, planes, trains, automobiles. You know how it is. So, while I was doing a lot of that type of work and out in the field a lot, I was watching a lot of news. I was taking in a lot of news, and just because you're there in a hotel or an airport and there's a TV there, so you just first thing you do is you turn on the television, you put on the news. So I remember taking in so much news that it was actually making me unhealthy. It really was. It was actually permeating into my everyday life because I was always constantly wanting to know, okay, what's going on next? And then having like polarizing opinions about so many different things and, not really understanding what the real truth was. So I totally believe in what you're talking about right there about having a balanced media diet and not taking in too much at the same time too. So I think that's really great. And
it's like you were eating too much junk food.
That's exactly what it was, man. It was too much Skittles for the brain, man. It was not good. It was not good at all. You know what? It's so funny that, we talked about Operation Mockingbird earlier. Who do you think currently right now in the mainstream media is an operative? What is it? Anderson Cooper? Is it Don Lemon? Is it Maddow? Is it what's the other guy on Fox? What's his name?
Yeah, there's a number of them. I would refrain from speculating. There's a few names that I do look at in the book. Yeah, you have Anderson Cooper, who actually interned at the CIA for 2 different
he did.
summers. Not just one summer, he interned there for 2 summers. Never had any training in media or journalism, didn't show any interest, and then suddenly he's a media guy, has a quick rise. He spent some time overseas, has a quick rise, and then before you know it, he has his own show on CNN. He's sort of at the pinnacle of the corporate media establishment. Looks very much like a Mockingbird, what I call a Mockingbird career. What you had with Operation Mockingbird, which is known, so it's very free to talk about it. What you had in Operation Mockingbird is several ways. Like, they would actually find some of the most prestigious journalists, and they would, the CIA or like Defense Intelligence would approach them and say, "Hey, can you do your patriotic duty? And just mention a couple of these things, and don't mention so much of that." Or who knows how they're. But then they were brought in. You had that going on. You also had actual agents placed at media establishments, some of the major biggest newspapers, Time Magazine, and then even more. You actually had, and this is certainly still going on, you have intelligence agents in upper management at media organizations, right? So the ones that actually write the headlines, not the story, the ones that actually edit rather than write the stories. That's where there's even more manipulation going on. So we know that was going on then. So to infer about today, I think is not too hard to do. I might refrain about guessing about other names without evidence, but it's certainly worth about.
It's a fun game I like to play, and it's funny because one day on my travels, I actually met Tucker Carlson and spent about 15 minutes with him at a bar.
Wow.
Yeah, and took a picture with him and everything. And he is not the same Tucker Carlson that you see on TV. Let me tell you that right now. That guy is a show on TV, a complete show. The guy that I met was completely different, was just a regular guy like you and me. And it really opened my eyes. It just happened about 2 or 3 years ago. And it really opened my eyes because I was like, oh, I get it now. This is all for fun and show, or, this is not real. This is all like, fantasy land. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, man. And I met him, and nice guy. I can't say he was a mean guy or anything, of ill, he was very nice, very, gentlemanly. And I can't say nothing bad about the guy, but then you see him on TV and he's this completely different dude. And you're like, oh, okay, now I get it. This is a big old, cloak and dagger thing here that's going on. So it was a very interesting wake-up call for me. But anyways, nonetheless, I digress. Listen, Tony, again, your book, Red, White, and Blind, make sure you go to his website, TonyBrasunas.com. We'll have the link here at the bottom of the page. Tony, thank you so much for joining us on Dark Fringe Radio. We definitely love to have you back on here in the future, maybe right before the book comes out, and maybe do a little quick, a quick chat with us. How's that sound?
I'd love to. Will, it's been a pleasure. Yeah, have me back anytime. Be great.
Absolutely. Tony, thank you so much. Again, TonyBrasunas.com. Make sure you go check out his book, Red, White, and Blind. So make sure you go ahead and check it out. Make sure you go to Amazon.com and make sure you pick it up. It'll be a great read, I promise you. Again, TonyBrasunas.com. Thank you so much. And we'll have you back on. Thank you so much, Tony.
Wonderful. Thank you, Will.
All right. Have a good night.
You too.
All right. Take care.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Mr. Tony Brasunas. Make sure you can go to his website, TonyBrasunas.com, and also you can go to redwhiteandblind.com and check out the book right there as well. Again, they are having an online book release on February 7th, so make sure you go to TonyBrasunas.com and check that out. See how you can jump on the Zoom meeting and be presentable for that. So we really appreciate him coming on the podcast and spreading his knowledge. And again, thank you guys for coming on another edition of Dark Fringe Radio. Make sure you go to our website before I let you go, darkfringeradio.com. That's where you can find all our stuff. And that's pretty much it for tonight. Jay, you have anything else to add for the episode?
Be consistent in level, but be creative in movement.
There we go. I like that. That's very good. Very, very good. Very Marcus Aurelius. I like that. Very good, Jay. Well,
yeah. It hit me when I was shooting pool the other night. I was like, I gotta remember that next time I podcast.
There we go. Very nice. Well, listen, we really appreciate you guys checking us out. Make sure you check out our website, darkfringeradio.com. And that's it. We'll see you guys again next week.
Dark Fringe Radio, your premier source for the paranormal, conspiracy theory and true crime.